Khalees, could I get you to move to a mic? So if I have questions, go through the executive report.
Ready whenever you are, so we know it's
We're waiting on Kent. Kent will be right back.
Okay. I didn't see
I was getting a lot of emails done back there.
And we do have an executive report before closed session. You do closed session. I'm sorry, before public comment. You can do that first.
All right, I think we're good to start. All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Today is Friday, June 13th, and the time is 11:31. A quorum is present. All board members, with the exception of Dr. Lisa Bowen, are present. The meeting has been duly called, and notice of the meeting was posted as required by law. Okay. Now if I can organize myself to get to the right agenda. I know it says executive report first on the agenda, but I'd like to know if there's anybody here for public comment, and we'll just start with that. All right? No one's here for public comments, so now we can go back to executive report. Is that you or?
That is me, and Khalees may add some color commentary where I'm say something she didn't want me to say, so we'll see. Now, I may have some questions for her. We're going to talk today in our executive report about our graduations, the celebration time of year for all the teachers across the state of Texas and all the hard work they've done, so we'll talk a little about that. I'm going to give you a legislative update from the, was it the 89th session? A funding update from that session just ended, and then a testing and accountability update. If you can believe this amazing number, we've graduated over 30,000 students in our 27 years, 30,661. Is that not amazing? And this year is our highest number ever with over 3,600 graduates. And you see the breakdown there of the different models, brands, the 2 virtual schools. And so very exciting numbers. One of the new part there is Texas Works. That's our adult ed charter, and they had well over 100, almost 200 graduates this year. So very, very excited about the success of those graduates. In addition to graduating with a diploma, we had 93 graduates who, prior to graduating, walk across the stage. Generally, I think this happens almost every location. They get their associate's degree about 3 weeks before. So we had 93 of our graduates actually graduate with their associate's degree a couple of weeks before they got their high school diploma. And then here's the breakdown of our industry-based certifications. These are graduates who walk away with a skill where they have an easier time getting a job that pays well to get started into the industry. So we're very excited about these graduates. Legislative update from Texas legislative session, the 89th session. We had SB 2 pass. We've talked about probably most of these before. SB 2 specifically is the Education Savings Account, or the voucher program as some people call it. And I'm not going to run through all the words here. It's in your PowerPoint. You can look at it at your leisure and ask questions if you would like, but I'll give you a few highlights here. So This is funded $1 billion, so that would, projections are there'd be around 100,000 students out of there's 6.5 million school-age kids in the state of Texas. So it is definitely a start. We've been, the advocates for education savings accounts have been working on this for 20+ years. So to finally get that started, it's going to give parents an opportunity to put their kids in quality schools in their neighborhood where in the past they have not had other options, including charters. They've been stuck with the local district schools. So this is a very exciting change in the state of Texas, being able to offer this. The funding for a child will be about 85% of the estimated statewide average. There's additional funding for students who are special needs that will be closer to 100%, but the average child that does not have an ARD would end up around 85%. So still nice sum of money for parents that, again, have been trapped in their local schools for years. SB 569 is the virtual bill. It also includes hybrid education. It's changed to where, as you can see in bold there, it's changed to an average daily attendance calculation from a completer model, and it allows any school district, any charter to be able to apply to the commissioner. So there will be a lot more providers in virtual and hybrid education in the future. So again, a great trend to give parents options. Khalees had sent me an article yesterday. Wall Street Journal was talking about, editorial board talking about Florida. Over 50% of kids in Florida now are utilizing some kind of school choice, whether it's the local district being open enrollment and you can choose which campus you go to, or whether it's voucher, ESAs, or charter schools. Half of the students, 1.5 million in the state of Florida, have choices and have those options. So we're excited that these things are coming to Texas now and again, give more opportunities to parents. SB 1490 is related to adult education, and this is just changing the funding model to be more in line with the logic of if you had enrolled and you had been enrolled for 75% of the school days, you would get 100% of the funding. And then as it got lower, the tiers, the bill was not, the original bill did not kind of hold that logic throughout. So this is updating the logic to where it does make more sense on how you're funded based on your enrollment, number of days enrolled compared to the school calendar. SB 12 is related to parental rights in education and limitations on DEI in the classroom. You see that there, the 2 bullet points. And then continuation of things that are tied to parental rights under SB 12. Talking about school funding from the legislative session, SB 2, you can see here that the funding as a state, they invested another $8.5 billion, or around $500 per ADA, 5%, back in education. And you can see the breakdown of, this is a huge win for charter schools. The second piece, which is the facility funding for charters, that was capped, and that cap had us at about 157 per ADA, and now there is no cap. And without that cap, it's going to go this first year under the new legislation to 373 per ADA. And Joe, I think we totaled that around, what was the number total for the 24,000 students? Is it about 8 million?
Slightly north of that.
About $8 million total that we'll be generating from facility funding in the state of Texas. So very huge win. We've been working on that for over 12 years.
Did you actually have to show through audits and that you're using the 373 or just north of 8 million on facilities?
How do they audit that? Do they?
I don't believe they're going to. Once again,
They haven't been, have they? The current facility funding has not really had a way of auditing that.
I need that, Corey. No.
They have a new The House wanted to increase the basic allotment. The Senate did not, so the Senate created this ABC allotment for basic costs. So it's $106 per student, and it can be used for specific items that are listed there. So all charters and school districts have these costs, so in a sense, you add that 106 to the increase of basic allotment as well. Of course, the basic allotment, all the weights related to special funding are tied to that, so not having this in the basic allotment reduces those amounts, which is probably one of the reasons the Senate did not add this to the base allotment. So that's another 106 per student. A lot of the funding, over half the funding, the $8.5 billion is tied to teacher increases, experienced teachers, their increases, and you can see the breakdown there based on the size of the school. We would fall in that 5,000 and up. Heritage would be in that 5,000 or less, and you can see the dollar amount tied to the years of experience by a teacher. Non-teaching staff or teachers that do not have the 3+ years of experience will be funded a potential increase under this support staff retention allotment, or teachers who, again, do not have 3+ years. And that is $45 per student is going to the district, the charter, to be able to help supplement some of that. Here's some new allotments. I'm not going to run through all these. Again, they're in your notebook. Basic allotment did go up. Was it $50? $52. Not much, but again, all our calculations are based on that. So this 62.15 is the new number. Okay. And then you can see with early education, that's increased for all K through 3 students by $62. And then school safety allotment, we told you this when we proactively invested in school safety last budget year, that we believed money would be coming. So it's increased from $15,000 to $33,000 per campus, plus the $20 per ADA. So Joe, do you have a number off the top? What is that, like 2 or 3 million?
2 million and change.
2 million and change, an increase. Again, we already budgeted that last year, and it is in the budget this year, but now there's revenue to cover part of it. Anything I left out you want to add to, Khalees? Okay, and testing accountability update. The data has, the results are being released. They're being shared with campus leadership, internal data, but from the growth side, domain 2, we're still waiting on data from the state, and we will be calculating all this fast and furious, Dr. Fellers and her team, to get us a projection, hopefully within the next week and a half, 2 weeks. And we will be sharing that with you soon. I am going to forego showing this video, but I would just encourage you to go back and look at this video, watch this. This is a new, it's kind of a commercial, I would say, for the Founders brand. It was very well done, so please look at that sometime. All right, we're done with executive report.
Okay, so we're going to go to consent items. Are there any changes to the accurate 1 through 13 on the
No, sir.
section D?
We're asking for approval of these 13 consent items.
Okay. I will make a motion to approve the consent items 1 through 13 on the agenda. Do I hear a second?
I second it.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The consent items D, 1 through 13 pass unanimously. And so now we're on to section E, which is the Board Budget Summit and School Finance Training, which we get the pleasure of hearing Joe.
Yeah, when people use the word pleasure and school finance training in the same sentence, that always makes me happy. So thank you very much for that.
Just refer to the tree a couple of times during your presentation.
Do my best.
Keep people focused.
All right. So here we go, school finance training. I'm going to run through this quickly. If anyone wants to have further discussions, I'm more than welcome to do so at any time. All right, I'm going to start with available resources. There is a lot of publicly available publicly available information on school finance on the TEA website. If you've never had a chance to look at it, I encourage you to do so. One of the resource guides, the Financial Accountability System Resource Guide, affectionately known as FASREG, it's over 800 pages, not including the links to external documents. There's a lot there, but there's just some great information available. And note, we utilize generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP, just like we talked about earlier, the auditors from Arkansas. These are GAAP financial statements. All right, our overall revenue primarily comes from the state of Texas through the Foundation School Program. There are different ways where we can earn revenue. The method for most of our revenue is through average daily attendance. So it's very important that our students are in class each and every day to generate the maximum amount of funding. Other methods, there's a completion method currently for virtual. Chuck alluded to that might change next year in our new adult education charter. We actually earn revenue through the percentage of time in the year the students are enrolled. So there are different methods whereby we earn revenue from the state of Texas. I do want to mention the basic allotment is $6,160 currently. Chuck mentioned that goes to $6,215 next year, but that's just a base allotment depending on the type of student. For example, if a student is in special education, they generate additional funding for those needs. So the true revenue we get per student is about double that basic allotment. TCPA is slightly less. This next slide is a sample of the Summary of Finances report. This is for our new Texas Works Charter. This information, once again, is publicly available for all charter schools. It documents our ADA and our funding that we're expected to receive for the year. We basically submit our student data to the state. They crunch the numbers, and they tell us what our expected revenue is for the year. This comes out at least every month and is not final until well into the subsequent fiscal year. So that's how we're able to track what our expected revenue is for the year by charter. All right, moving out of revenue, I'm going to talk about our accounting code structure. Our coding string is relatively large. It's 10 data elements and 24 characters. When I started about 2 years ago, I'm like, wow, that's pretty big. I've come to appreciate the flexibility and the functionality this coding string provides us, because we can slice and dice all of our data in different ways, which I'll explain soon. So it lets us look at all of our transactions in multiple ways. We use this full coding string clearly for all of our journal entries, but we use the full coding string in our budgeting process as well. So when I explain that momentarily, just note that. Of the 10 data elements, 5 of them are required specifically by TEA, and I'll walk through them. The other 5 are more at charter discretion, and they are useful as well. One of those data elements is the fund code. This is basically the source of the funds. For our last completed fiscal year in 2024, our overall revenue was $291 million. As you can see, the vast majority of that, almost 90%, was state funds, so it comes from the state, as I described. A little less than 10% comes from federal funds, so from the federal government. A relatively small number, I say relatively small, it's still big in itself, but 5% are from local sources, including interest, rent, and some donations as well. costs. So we're able to determine the revenue and related expenses for each and every one of our campus, which helps us to manage our business. We also have an overall org for the charter for those expenses that don't fit into a neat bucket of an individual campus and campus alone. And then moving on to program intent code, we are required to track some of our revenue and expenses by the intent of those. So for example, you can see special education being the biggest one. All of our revenue for special ed, we have a 55% spend requirement. What that means is 55% of the revenue received is we have to track it, and we have to prove that's spent directly for special education students. So things like special education teachers, computers that are used exclusively for special ed. So that's why we have the program intent code to be able to comply with the requirements, some of the spending requirements we have for those special populations. All right, and last, and I went through that quickly, here is a budget overview from that resource guide, FASREG. So I flip to that slide. So the governing body of the charter school, this fantastic group, thank you very much, must formally adopt the budget prior to the start of the fiscal year, which is in a few weeks. That budget must be itemized once again by function, the purpose of those expenses, and the minutes of the board meeting must record the adoption of to said budget. So I know that was relatively quick, but consider yourself trained and be more than happy to answer any questions before I move on to the actual budget presentation for the next fiscal year.
Okay, I know you have lots of questions about the FASREG. Who wants to go first? Any questions? All right, let's move into the actual consideration of the budget. You want to present that, Joe?
Yes, please. I'm going to slow it down just a little bit. So our agenda today, before I jump in, if you will please allow me just 1 minute to recognize the budget team. This is months in the making, and they have done a lot of great work. Corey Fisher is behind me in the lovely colored shirt. He has been here about 8.5 years, a lot of great contributions and a lot of good experience. To my right, the gentleman over there in the suit, his name is Ken Hanneman. He's been with us for over a year. He worked with me at a prior life, and he's done great work as well. And last but certainly not least, Shadaria Mallory, sitting next to Ken. She, I said last year, is my budgeting hero. She has done phenomenal, phenomenal work to get this done many, many months. So thank you, team. All right, so the rest of the agenda, I'm going to walk through some of the details, more at a summary level, starting with the budget document. You all have in your hands what looks like this. I know there is lots of detail. This is also in your board materials online. I am not going to walk through that document page by page unless you want me to. I'm going to go through some of the assumptions and the process that was used to create the budget, and I think that might be more helpful for this team. So first of all, walking through the process, it is a detailed bottom-up build of, depending on how you count them, about 20,000 records of those 24 characters that I just described in the training. Please note, in this, there were no predetermined targets, meaning we didn't tell anyone this is what your budget has to be, and at the same time, there are no plugs. I've done budgeting for many years, and it would not be out of norm to say it's not where we need to be. We need to make it what it needs to be. That's not the case here. So it is truly the summation of about 20,000 records. We did have 20 department owners contribute to this process. So for example, Dr. Herron, the head of special ed, supplied all the special ed assumptions. Our director of facilities supplied, landscaping and maintenance and repair. So the subject matter experts were involved in the process and able to create this. Average daily attendance, which is probably the most significant assumption we have, the finance team did. We looked at data from the last 7 years or so to come up with educated assumptions of what that might look like. Campus payroll, we started out with all of our headcount in detail person by person, we asked the superintendents to look over that and make sure that what our current roster was indicative of what it was going to be in the following year. We also provided them benchmark activities to identify campuses that, all else equal, might be more or less efficient from a payroll perspective. And as I said before, payroll is about 60% of our expenses, so it's incredibly important that we spend a lot of time looking at payroll, and we did have a thorough exercise on that. Some of the remaining items finance calculated, like utilities, rent, interest, and those things. And there was, I'll say, a month of review whereby when we rolled it up, we identified areas where, relative to the last few years, this looks a little light, and we went back to the drawing board and figured out if we missed anything. At the same time, if any expenses were overly heavy, we would go to the subject matter experts to determine, yep, that makes a lot of sense, or you need to sharpen your pencil a little bit. So that process was done. To begin with the end in mind, to quote the 7 Habits, and to give you historical context, the budget that we're presenting today has a surplus of about $6.5 million. You can see the split out by charter. That compares to what I presented to you around this time last year of about $5.3 million. So somewhat similar, and you can see the breakdown by charter is somewhat similar as well. Just to note, the year is not done yet. The end of the year tends to be somewhat volatile. My anticipation is we're going to exceed that surplus for the 2025 year if all goes according to plan. All right, some of the major assumptions implicit in the budget. Our average daily attendance, I've already said, is incredibly important because that's what derives funding from primarily and gives us the guardrail of what our expenses can be. Is growth of almost 2,000 ADA, which will be the highest that I know of in the history of our organization for Texas, which is really exciting. On the surface, that sounds pretty aggressive, but when you break it out and look to the individual components, all of those seem in isolation pretty reasonable. I'll pick a few just to talk about. Mature campuses are in line with where they have been over the last few years. Data tells us that we're growing about 400 ADA due to the new Texas Works campuses. The first year of Texas Works was very successful. You know, if history repeats itself, that is clearly a doable number. And we do have growth from relocations, expansions, and also some new schools as well. So when you add all that up, that's what breaks out that extra 2,000 ADA. Virtual course completion rates, they're a little bit conservative relative to history, as Chuck mentioned. The method whereby we're going to get funding for virtual looks to change next year. Coincidentally, those numbers are in line with our brick and mortar ADA for the charter, so those hold up. I want to say coincidentally, it holds up pretty well. Big assumption, revenue per ADA increase of 2%. That would be a quote-unquote normal year, as Chuck just described, kind of the hot off the press news from the legislature. It looks like it's going to be closer to 5%, maybe even a little more, so that is a conservative assumption. So I'm more than comfortable with that, along with the next assumption of 2.5% increase in all wage rates. There is a pass-through funding on all of our a lot of our teacher raises. So once again, that gives me comfort that 2.5% will likely be more than enough for the budget. So continued, so there's going to be inflation in the other object codes, typically a normal 2 to 3%. We are assuming a responsive ed donation of $3.5 million compared to it was $5.5 million in the budget for last year. We have about $4 million in contingency inherent in the budget. That's for a couple things. One, if we miss anything. Two is if we, throughout the year, if there's something else that we choose to do, we've got funding available. Just note that's very similar to what we put in the budget for the 2025 year, and we use just over half of it. So I'm glad we have a contingency in our budget. It assumes Austin, that campus is owned all year. I know in the kind of the board agenda today, there's a proposal to sell it. If we do sell it, there's about $1 million extraordinary gain, and we have about $800,000 of expenses for facility-related costs that would go away. Once again, somewhat conservative assumption. Marketing expenses are in line with last year, so no major impact on ADA, either positively or negatively on the surface relative to marketing. We are taking a conservative approach to federal funds. We're assuming specifically the CSP grant is not able to be extended, and some of those expenses that were paid via federal funds shift to state funds and are included in this budget. And last, not to get too technical, but it is part of the board consent items, the interlocal agreement between PHS and Texas Works is not assumed because it's not approved neither by this group nor by TEA. It's not an overall surplus deficit. It's just geography between Premier and Texas Works. Texas Works and Premier are co-located, and a lot of the expenses like utilities and rent that traditionally have gone to Premier but Texas Works benefits from, those are still going to Premier. That interlocal agreement enables us to allocate some of those expenses that Texas Works has because they're co-located to Texas Works, that adult ed charter. Hopefully that made some sense. And I know I'm going quick, so feel free to stop me if you have questions. All right, so some of the corporate admin fees, just want to make sure these are disclosed. There's not a whole lot of change from prior years. The CMO fee is paid to Blue Learning. It's 8.5% for all the non-Texas Works campuses. The admin fee, which is paid to the 501c3 for some of the back office work, those percentages has not changed. And by the way, Texas Works, that was what was presented to TEA a few years ago before that new charter was approved. And just very quick disclosure, although it's not a significant amount in the grand scheme, we do have $30,000 implicit in the budget for Blue Learning on behalf of Book Tribe for Kids. I know that some on this board, their families are involved in that organization. Our Ignite schools, which are underprivileged, buy summer reading books. And we.
Let me just say, Kent, you know this, but for new board members, Book Drive for Kids is a nonprofit organization that was founded by Ben's wife and my wife, Michelle and Nicole. So we just make sure we call this out. And I think we're going to have you vote separately if you so choose, and we recuse ourselves on that part of the budget. And it does go to Blue Learning because Blue Learning was able to basically forward some money to Book Drive for Kids several years ago during COVID, I think it was. So we've just kept it going through Blue Learning. But again, we want to disclose it to you that you know our wives are a part of that organization. And this is an item where the individual campus makes the decision. This number has been as high around COVID of 120,000 to now 30,000 is what they're expecting. So it's there's no pressure on the campuses. The campuses decide themselves whether they want to participate in this summer reading program. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so now here is the summary statement of activities. I know there are lots of numbers on that page that is also in the recap of this lovely document that you have. I just do want to mention the budget revenue is $298 million. Why not make it an even 300? Well, that goes back to my initial assumption. There's no plugs in this budget. Same thing, expenses are $292 million, which equates to a surplus of about $6.5 million, or 2%. That's similar to what we presented last year. You could see the surplus by charter, and once again, that does include $4 million of contingency in that number. My last slide is the expenses by function. So if I may, in a moment, ask board approval on this. Once again, for the training that you just received, we ask the board to approve the budget before the fiscal years of expenses by function. You can see the numbers at the bottom of the page, the 190-ish million or so for TCPA, the numbers for Premier and Texas Works, and then just as a label underneath the surplus, it's the same surplus that's already described by charter. And just so you know, the percentage of the budgets of over 50%, for example, instruction, those are all somewhat in line with historical years. So be glad to answer any questions and humbly ask for the board to approve the 25-26 budget by function as presented, please.
Any questions? Apparently, you just You did a great job, Joe. So. As expected.
That team did a
And
great
the
job.
team. You just in your description of how it
Thank you.
worked. Yeah. And surprisingly, I'm surprised I have no questions, which is
You're more than welcome.
no, I just don't. I think you did a
Okay.
great job
Good,
explaining.
thank you.
So that's great.
I'll ask one, Ben, for
Great.
you. In the historical context, where you talk about 2025, and you have it broken out by TCPA, PHS,
Yep.
when I add TCPA and PHS together for that period, it was 6.6 million. Looking at this year, those two combined are down to 3.4. But Texas Works goes from not listed to 3.6. Is it because of that?
That's a great question and very astute. Yes. So last year, that is exactly right. So for Texas Works, when you combine the PHS number and the Texas Works number, that is somewhat indicative of the Premier High School. Texas Works, the first year was this year, and it basically, the surplus almost was like, it was like $20,000. It didn't almost exist. Because of that interlocal agreement, because a lot of those expenses are not at Texas Works, when you add those, the 2.7 this year and the 3.6 to get to 6 million, that's approximately equivalent to the Premier last year of 5.
Okay, that's what I was expecting, but I needed to hear it from you.
Yes, sir. That's a great question. Thank you for that.
6.3.
Anything else? All right. So I'll make a motion to approve the 2025-2026 budget as described and presented by Joe, our CFO. Do I hear a second?
I second it.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
The motion to approve the budget passes unanimously. Thank you.
Do you want to have them vote separately on Book Drive for Kids?
Yeah, well, let's just do that, that expense, the budget, the $30,000 for Book Drive for Kids. If somebody
We want
would make a motion.
Kent
and
to chair
approve
that
it.
vote?
Yeah. So you understand, you've been.
Yeah, I understand why we've set it aside. What are you asking us to do with
Yeah,
that?
just if you agree with that expense and in the budget of $30,000, that you ask for a motion and approve, and Chuck and I will abstain.
Okay.
from
Yep.
the-
And feel free to ask questions of whoever's in the room, including myself.
Yeah. Yeah, would someone like to make a motion to approve that $30,000 for the Book Drive for Kids?
Yeah, I'll make the motion, Kent, that we consider the $30,000 to Blue Learning for the Book Drive for Kids for the summer reading books.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Okay. Very good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Any
passes
abstain?
unanimously with Ben and Chuck recusing themselves.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Chuck.
All right, so we're going to go to the second item, which is the property in Austin.
All right, we're going to present a property that we own in Austin. We have an offer that is a good offer that Robert and Lynn are going to present to us.
All right, well, thank you for having me here. Appreciate your time. Draw your attention to the slide. We call it Austin Tuscany. We purchased the building in the end of 2020. We paid about $7.8 million for it. When we bought it, we negotiated a credit from an existing tenant of about $749,000. That puts us into the building for about $11.7 million. And so we also have a book value of 10.9. We received a third-party appraisal of 12.6, and we listed it for $13.5 million. We have a contract on it, as Mr. Cook said. It's for $12.875. It's to a company called Blueprint. They work with some charters, and they have a 60-day feasibility period right now that they're in. It's estimated that if they could close on 7/24, but if they extend, they could close on 8/24.
So this building was one we put a Founders in. We thought it would be a commuter school. People would be driving to downtown, bring their kids, drop their kids off to a liberal arts, classical education. It did not, it was not successful, and that's why we closed the school, merged back with Leander, and if you look at other charters in the area, they serve a different population, different academic model, so we're glad somebody else is going to be able to put a charter in there and be successful with it. Our choice was to close it and list the building, which we did, and we got what we consider a decent offer. So we're asking for approval to sell the building to Blueprint for this $12.875 million.
Remind me what the FFE is, or is it a particular expense that we retain?
Furniture.
It's all the furniture, fixtures, equipment, so we're
Those
keeping,
assets.
we're keeping the assets
And
inside the
they'll come
building.
back and they'll sit in that, if they already are sitting in the
Right.
warehouse, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so about, you said we were in about 11 million, and the sale is for 12.8, right?
How much do we have in it total? Is that on that slide before, or is it right,
Yes.
there it is?
So if our book value on it is 10.9, but as far as the,
We invested 11.7?
yes,
Okay. And they're offering us, the next slide is 12.8,
8.
so $1 million?
Nearly
Great.
13. I mean, that's good.
Okay.
I think that's a good result. Right. Any questions?
Joe, you said that's going to free up 800,000 of expenses?
It will, in the budget for like depreciation and utilities, and yes, we have 800,000, which would, in theory, go away if this transaction goes through.
Okay.
But it's the 800 is in this
Yes.
now, so yeah, okay, right. So, you know, about a 13.7, I mean, I'm aggregating the expense with the, so 13. Yep.
I'll move that we approve the sale of the property located in Austin as discussed.
Do I hear a second?
I second it.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
The motion passes unanimously. We approve the sale of the property in Austin as described.
all right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynn.
We'll move on next to
Shenandoah.
an exciting project. We have some boards up there with some elevations for you, but we're talking about Shenandoah Quest Campus. It's a very suburban, small community. It's adjacent to Conroe. It's about 2.2 square miles, and I believe that we're the only K through 8 elementary school in Shenandoah, so that's kind of a unique thing. It has a relatively steady population. It does have growth. So it's located on Wellman Road, and it was purchased in 2020, May of 2020. It's about a 28,000 square foot building. We paid approximately $4.5 million for the building. Has an average enrollment of about 400 students, which is continuing to climb. 24 more students in the previous year and 55 more than 2023. We're proposing $9.7 million be invested in this building for an expansion and renovation of some existing facilities. We're expecting, if we can get moving, that we'll be finishing up the summer of next year. Our status to date, we've submitted our landscape and civil drawings to the City of Shenandoah, as well as the MEP and architectural. The project is currently out for bid. We're expecting bids to be returned to us on 6/23, and shortly after that, we would hope to go to contract. We do have a couple risks. Risks involve tariffs and the instability of pricing for construction materials, but hopefully we'll overcome that. And we're scheduled to get our permit on 7/25, so here pretty quick. What we're proposing to do is construct a two-story building. It's approximately 25,000 feet. It'll include 20 classrooms, all 680 to 700 square feet, a couple of breakout rooms, elevator, office. We're also going to be constructing parking lots, drives, doing some landscaping. There's a sanitary sewer upgrade that needs to be done. And then also, the previous owner of this school had an agreement with the city of Shenandoah to remove some portables. And I'll show you an illustration of that on the next slide. But so as part of this project, we'll remove these portable buildings, which they're about on the end of their expected life. So we'll be removing 4 portables that have 8 classrooms, 2 classrooms apiece in them. But we'll be gaining 12 classrooms net. I wish I could point, but the gray building is the new structure that we're proposing. The circular drive, that's the parking lot that will be going with it. And then towards the bottom of your screen, a little bit to the left, that's an auxiliary building. And that building is getting new finishes as well. Pretty standard floor plan. This is laid out specifically for Quest. Quest uses Carroll's, so we've maximized the classroom length and width to work well with the Carroll's. Of course, in the front of the building, there's an elevator. In this building, there's not really going to be a reception area. You're going to enter this building through the main building, so you'll be processed in, and then you'll travel from the existing building to this building. On the left are some color samples consistent with the Quest branding.
All right, thank you. Just to go over the financials of the transaction, as I mentioned before in the finance training, ADA is critically important because that's what determines funding. If you look at this chart, as you can see, the darker blue lines, ADA historically has been growing consistently at this campus. For this year, we're expecting it to come in around 380. Next year, about 400, but continues that trend. And speaking with the superintendent, he feels that that building is pretty much maxed out. And we have right now a wait list of over 100 students. So once the new building is constructed and our capacity increases to, we believe, over 600 students, we're estimating that our ADA grows to right around 500. A little bit less in the first few years and a little bit above in the out years. So that's a critical assumption. Just the other assumptions to talk about. I learned my lesson last time by not putting an eye chart on here. That's actually in the appendix. But in words, all the statement of activities lines are in line with other campuses, sister campuses. So we feel pretty good that they are reasonable, and at the same time, we have expenses growing slightly more than revenue on a percentage basis. As Lynn mentioned, the overall capital outlay, including the building and the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, is right around $10 million. And we're projecting to use the existing bonds to fund this project. The summary, based on those assumptions, for years 1 through 5 are as shown. As you can see, it tops out at about a surplus of $368,000, which would be a good outcome for this project. The last bullet point basically says the payback, on a cash-on-cash return basis, is about 9 years, which, the few of these that we've done, that seems to be kind of in the sweet spot for what we've, what I presented last time. I think it was 10 years. So that's pretty close as well. All right, my last slide, and I do realize that there are a lot of numbers on this one, but I do enjoy it. This is a sensitivity analysis. So On the horizontal axis, that's actually the ADA. On the vertical axis is the construction cost. If you look at the box, it's $368,000, which ties to the last slide. You can choose your own adventure on this, and I like to look at it if you move a few spaces to the left. What it shows me is we will have a break-even surplus, so no surplus, no deficit, at an ADA of around 440 students, where we're at about 400 currently with a wait list of 100. So that gives me some comfort that we do have some downside protection to and still achieve a break-even surplus, which is not ideal, but still acceptable. So with that, no questions for either of us. Please asking for approval of the 10.2 million as described.
Yeah, just one question related more, and this might be for you guys, Chuck, and as we see here in Louisville and in Flower Mound, the population and the number of students seems to be decreasing. In Shenandoah's, I think it was something like total population of 3,700 or so. Is that population, and I saw that it was increasing, is that, I mean, are they families? Is it, that community, is it sustainable over a 10-year or a 9-year period?
It's kind of a misnomer. I'm not really sure why we showed that. It's basically Double Oak. It's surrounded by Flower Mound, so it's the Woodlands. The Woodlands,
it's South
Conroe.
Houston out there, so
It's
it's
kind of irrelevant,
Okay.
the size of the facility, but we are the only school there.
That's
So that's kind of neat.
So we get more than just that community.
A lot
We're
more.
getting it from-
Yeah, it's the booming part of Houston.
Right. Look pretty, so, good.
18 minutes drive time.
All right.
Yeah.
Do I hear a motion to, is the motion for 9.7? What's the motion for?
10.2.
10.2, including the furniture, fixtures, and equipment.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the cost of construction, including the furniture, and the amount identified as 10.2 million. Do I hear a second?
I'll second, Ben.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, the motion to approve the construction costs Quest Shenandoah project passes unanimously. All right.
It's the last separate item.
Yeah, we talked about this before, right? The sale of the Denton
We
property?
did. Yes, so we're just actually asking for a vote on it. We have slides for it? I think we do. Do you have the clicker? Clicker's in front of you. It's a building we bought, you approved buying. We meant to have Holdings buy it, we had Texas buy it, so we're correcting that today. So we've shown you this building before, but I'm going to let James walk through the specifics.
Right, so in looking at, this kind of has this building has a special situation whereby the Denton Classical needed to exit their current building, and we have a 1-year gap prior to having a building constructed in Denton for them to operate. So in the interim, we purchased this building to host the Denton Classical School with responsibility to Texas. As you can imagine, that's kind of a 1-year use for the building. So we are proposing to sell the building itself to Responsive Ed Holdings, the real estate holding company for Responsive Education Solutions, which will then retain the risk and will allow flexibility for the use of this building for other purposes within the organization as we move forward. The purchase price would be the original cash purchase plus all fees associated with the purchase and sale of the property, as well as the estimated construction in preparation for the start of school for the new year. So the estimated sales price would be just under 2.7 million when we total those all together. So what we are requesting today is to sell this building from Responsive Ed Texas to Responsive Ed Holdings, which will then retain the building for long-term use and reduce the risk on Responsive Ed Texas.
We just purchased it, Texas did, and we're selling it to Holdings for what we've invested in it?
Everything that's been
Okay.
invested, and it was purchased for cash, so we'll also return cash to the book.
Okay. So when we have PSF funds, we're required for Texas to buy the buildings, it's permanent school funds, dollars. These other buildings, and there haven't been many, that we're buying outside of that PSF bonds, this has been our preference as we go through Holdings. Holdings owns it, leases it back, and then the state of Texas, at the end of the day, doesn't have any claim to the building. And that's the ultimate goal with this. And I've explained that before through the years. From your fiduciary standpoint, as a corporation, you want to continue the mission of the organization. At one point, this was an LLC of Texas. Now it's an LLC of Responsive Ed, the parent, or it's not actually a parent company, but the national company. We are trying, we've been working with TEA to get Responsive Ed Texas to be a subsidiary of Responsive Ed. It's kind of in a holding pattern. That's what we did in Arkansas. Arkansas allowed it. So we have things moving. We've been moving things to the national, or some people would call parent company, except Texas, again, is not underneath Responsive Ed at this point. But Holdings is a pass-through as an LLC. It's for all intents and purposes, in my view, you'd call it a nonprofit of Responsive Ed.
It's a disregarded entity from the perspective of the IRS. Okay.
And the important part is that Texas is getting the cash back.
Right.
And this was an accommodation because we had a lot of parents that were, and I'm not saying we're accommodating the parents, it's good for us as an organization, but parents that were very upset about having a gap and not having the ability to have a school in Denton. And so I think we just did that like in January or something, when it was really recently that we approved the
Right.
purchase.
We just did.
Just this spring.
Yes.
Okay. Right. I don't have any questions other than statements. So, anybody have any questions?
I do not.
I'll ask for a motion to approve this transaction, the sale of the building to Responsive Ed Holdings for the purchase price identified. Do I hear a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
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 The motion passes unanimously and the sale is approved. So, okay, now I think we're ready for closed session. All right, everyone, thank you very much for that.
Before you leave the room, hold on. Let's read this and pause the video.
Pursuant to Section 551, Spot 076